Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for all of your lovely messages and your very kind response to my previous video in which I shared more about my personal journey with grief and what that's looked like over the last 2 years since our brother Paul died. I know that this is a really difficult topic and it's not easy to talk about it or learn about it or listen to this, and I completely understand if this video is not for you. I know it's very different to the lovely happy travel and lifestyle stuff that I also create, but also this is my life and this is something that I am going through and that many other people are going through as well. And this is really why I want to talk more about grief, because it is something that affects every single person in one way or another, directly or indirectly. And I think that the more we know and the more we talk about it and have open conversations and understand it, the better. And you'll be more equipped to support your loved ones or support yourself if it's something that you personally experience. So that kind of leads me on to the topic of this video, which is going to be about how you can support a loved one who is experiencing grief. And this is something I get asked about all the time. This video has been heavily requested and I can understand why, because I know that it's really hard to know what to do and you don't want to say the wrong thing and you don't want to make it worse. And often what happens is that people just don't say anything at all because they don't want to risk it. And I completely understand that, and it's hard to know how to support a loved one, but ultimately, you know, by not saying anything, that can also have quite a detrimental knock-on effect, because grief is isolating and lonely enough. And so hopefully this will just give you a few tools and give you a bit of insight. And I also want to say that if you are watching this video and you're spending this time with me to learn more about grief and how you can support, and you're asking yourself this question and you're YouTubing this question, then thank you, because that says so much about you and that shows that you are actively putting yourself out there and trying to learn about something that is really hard. It is such a hard topic, and the fact that you're learning about this when perhaps you might not necessarily need to, that's amazing. And I'm sure that the people in your life that you're trying to support, or the person, I'm sure that they'll appreciate that so much, and I definitely appreciate that too. I also just want to say that I am not a counsellor or a psychologist, and the sort of advice or tips that I will give are purely based on my experience. But it is really important to remember that everybody goes through and deals with grief very differently, and it is such an individual process. So I have written down a few little bullet points just because I want to make sure that this is as valuable as possible and that I'm not like waffling on for ages. So the first thing I'll say, and I think this is perhaps the most important thing to keep in mind and something that you should keep at the back of your mind all the time when you're trying to support a loved one, but also if you experience grief yourself, is that you really need to open your mind about what grief looks like. And remember that there is no right or wrong. There is no rule book. There is no manual, unfortunately, and really you're just winging it. You are just winging it and trying to survive and trying to get through, and you really need to take what you know of grief and just throw it out the window basically. I think that grief is often put into this box, and there are a lot of parameters around grief, a lot of rules, a lot of timelines, a lot of what's acceptable and what's not, and what's expected and what you should do and shouldn't do in the 5 stages of grief, and there's just a lot of parameters set around grief, and I don't like that, because grief is not logical. It is so messy. It is all over the place like this. And the way that I will often describe grief in a very visual way, and I quite like the visuals, and it helps me to often understand things, is like when you experience a great loss. And when I think back to when we found out the news, we got the phone call that Paul had died, it's like your entire world explodes, and it's like your very lovely world that was very much together and that was amazing, it's like a bomb has been dropped and it just gets shattered to pieces. And it's like you're standing among the wreckage and you're looking around and you're trying to find your footing, and you're dizzy and your ears are ringing, and everything you knew has been it's just shattered into a million pieces. And you then have to understand what's happened and try to gradually put those pieces back together. And you're trying to put the pieces back together, but inevitably they don't fit in the way that they used to. It's like when you smash a mirror, you can never ever put a mirror back together and have it how it was before. It's never going to be smooth. There's going to be pieces missing. It's going to have jagged edges, and it takes time to try and put those pieces together and find a way that broadly fits. So that's what it's like. That's from my perspective what it's like at the beginning, and also, you know, as you go on through this grief journey, you're just trying to put those pieces back together. And in the beginning especially, you're just trying to survive. And having support is so, so important. And having support that doesn't come with judgment, and that doesn't come with expectation, and that doesn't come with the shoulds and shouldn'ts is also so, so important. And I think back about, you know, the people who I shared the most with, or the people who I felt the most safe with, those people were the ones who were creating this space without judgment and without expectation. There is, oddly and annoyingly, a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts and a lot of expectation placed on those who are grieving. There are so many rules put on you around how you should and shouldn't act, what you should do, the hierarchy of grief. The number of times people would say to me, you know, but your parents, for them, are losing a child. It's the worst loss. For them, this is the worst loss, so you need to look after them. And people would say that, putting a hierarchy on this pain and saying, in an indirect way, their pain is worse than your pain. Things like that. It's like it doesn't help, and it makes it feel so much worse. And what you want in that moment when you're, you know, standing among the wreckage and you're trying to figure this out, what you need and what you want is just unconditional support from those people around you, and sort of an underlying acceptance that anything goes. Whatever you need, it goes. As long as it's not harmful to the individual, anything goes. Because really, as the person who is going through grief, you're just trying to figure it out, and you're just trying to wing it, and you're just trying to test and see what pieces fit together, and no, that one doesn't. You got to try the pieces, and it's literally trial and error putting the pieces back together. I also think that generally, kind of as a society, we shy away from emotions, and things like sadness. It's very uncomfortable, and people don't want you to be sad. And people will often say, you know, don't be sad. They wouldn't want you to cry. Don't cry. Like, you've got to be positive. Just focus on the positives. And again, I think we really need to shift our perspective around that, because when you have lost someone so close to you, when that person dies, of course you're sad. Of course you cry. Of course, you know, you don't want to get out of bed. Of course, because your whole world has come apart, and you have lost someone who is so important to you. So of course you're going to be upset. And so again, it's just about shifting your perspective, I suppose, and really just wiping the slate clean and throwing all that expectation of grief out of the window, and just remembering that anything goes, and just really trying to create a space that's open and that's accepting and that's non-judgmental is so, so important, and also so valued by the people who you're trying to support. So for the next tip, I will say, and I think this is a really, really important one. I mean, they're all important, to be honest, but just be there. Just be there for the person you're trying to support. And I think a lot of the time when we're trying to support a loved one, we overthink it. And we place a lot of expectation on ourselves, and we think, I have to come in and say something really profound, or I have to try and fix it, or I have to make it better. But that's a lot of expectation, and that's a lot of pressure, and inevitably and ultimately, like, you can't fix it and you can't make this better. But what you can do is you can be there, you can be present, you can let your person know that you love them, you can consistently let them know that. You don't just say it once and then don't say it again. Text them, tell them that you love them, tell them that you're here for them. Simply ask them what they need. This, I think, is really, really important. And a lot of people will say, let me know if you need anything, which is good in the sense of that it's open-ended. But I know for me personally, I didn't want to ask for help. I don't like asking for help. So when someone came to me and they said, I'm bringing you a coffee, would you like hot chocolate or would you like a coffee, for example? Or like, what do you need? Would you like me to come sit with you? Would you like me to bring my dog? Which I did take people up on that offer, and I did actually ask a couple of friends if I could borrow their dogs. That was one of the things I did ask for, and that really helped me. But having people present you with these questions saying, I'll come over, would you like me to cook you dinner, or would you like me to do your laundry? Things like that, I think, are really helpful, I found anyway. It just takes pressure off, and it just creates like an open invite to accept help, because not everybody wants to ask for help. Just remember that it's not about you. It's not about feeding your ego. It's not about, you feeling helpful. It's about the other person, and you simply being present, whether that is in person or being present virtually, because I know it's not easy to always be there physically, but just letting your person know that you're there for them, and that you are creating space for them, and you're here on standby, you're here to catch them if they fall, it means everything, and that is so valuable to know. The next thing, and I'd say this is arguably one of the hardest things for the supporters of those who are going through loss, is accepting the fact that you can't fix this. And I've had a lot of conversations with friends about this, and with Matt about this, my husband, because it is so difficult to see and to watch a loved one going through pain, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your partner, your child, your sibling. Like, it's human nature to want to help, and it's human nature to want to fix it and to be the person who can come in and fix it. And you really have to understand that you can't. There is nothing that you can do, nothing that you can say to fix this. And there is also no expectation that you can fix this or that you should fix this. And I think that is something that's really important for you to accept. And as I said, simply being there, that is everything. And you don't have to say anything profound. Sometimes it's better to just not say anything. And I think a lot of like the weird positivity and a lot of the general sort of platitudes that people say, and things like everything happens for a reason, like God wouldn't have done this if he didn't think you could handle it, look for the silver linings, you're strong, just be positive, if anyone can handle this, it's you. Things like that. Like, it's all meant with good intent, and people are just trying to help make you feel better. They're trying to fix it. But inevitably, it's like, this is really hard, and grief is really, really shit. And there are no positives, and there are no things that you can say to justify or bring reason to why this has happened. It's just awful. It's so horrendously awful. And so, you just sort of have to accept that you can't fix it, and nothing you can say will make this better. And it's okay to acknowledge how bad this is. And I think it's really good to acknowledge how bad this is, because what that does, it validates the person you're trying to support. It validates their pain. And it's actually really difficult when people invalidate your pain, because you're here going, oh my God, this is so hard, and they're going, yeah, but you've got this, just be strong. There's a reason this happened. Or they say things like this as a way of helping, but it really doesn't help, and it really doesn't validate your pain. So validating what they feel and acknowledging the severity of the situation is really, really vital, I think. I got a lot of like well, at least he is not suffering, at least you can now do XYZ, at least you still have your other sibling, which was like a stinger. And again, the at leasts, like, they don't help, and again, they just invalidate what you're feeling. And so yeah, the validation part is actually really, really crucial. The next thing I'd say is that it's really important as a supporter to look after yourself, and especially if you are the partner of somebody who has experienced a close loss, this is even more important. And I often think that the partners are like the silent heroes, and I think about Matt and how he's been over the last couple of years, and he's been so amazing. He's just been here ready to catch me when I fall, and he's been here on standby, and they are really our heroes, because I think they just keep the fort together basically. And I think it's really important as well, especially if you're the partner of somebody who has experienced a loss, I think it's really important to give your person space. That's something that I have really appreciated from Matt, is him understanding that he can't take this pain away, but he can be there if and when I need him. We obviously have Fino, who has been like a huge help for us, and he is a massive comfort for us and for me. But I think it's also really important as a supporter and as a partner, you need to remember to look after yourself, because you're no help if your cup is empty, and you're no help if you can't even support yourself. And while that might feel a little bit selfish perhaps, you also need to support yourself at the same time. Something that Matt said to me is that you have to realize too that you are not just grieving the person who has died. If it's your partner, for example, you're grieving the person your partner was. And I actually haven't really ever thought about it from this perspective until he said it. And I'm very aware of, like, for example, the person I am now, it's very different to the person I was pre-grief. And you do grieve parts of yourself, or you grieve your old self, but also the people around you, they also grieve the person that you were before, because grief changes you and it changes your entire world. And I think as a couple, for example, you really do need to give each other space and grow together and evolve together, and really try and keep up with the people that you are becoming, and as a result of this loss, if that makes sense. The next thing I'll say is that you really just have to think about what you're saying. And that sounds simple, but a lot of people really don't. And I think a lot of people will revert to the general platitudes and the general just phrases around grief. Most of the time they're really not helpful. And I think about all the people who've told me that my parents' loss is worse than my loss, because there's no pain worse than losing a child. And I think I can't comment on which is worse. I haven't experienced both. I genuinely don't think there is a hierarchy of grief. Grief is horrific no matter the relationship. But I also often think, like, these people that say that to me, are they actually thinking about what they're saying? Like, I genuinely don't think they are. I think they're just trying to help. But comments like that, they don't make me feel good. They make me feel small. They make my pain feel small. They brush aside what I'm feeling. And so I think it sounds simple, but really you just got to think about what you're saying. And if you don't know what to say, just tell your person you love them. Just tell them you're there for them. Give them a big hug. Send them a coffee or a croissant or whatever. Just, as I said, just be present and be there, and just be considerate with what it is that you're saying. So my second to last point, and I realize this video is quite long, so thank you if you're still here, is that you really need to be willing to get uncomfortable. Grief is not easy. It's an uncomfortable topic, and there is a lot of discomfort around grief, and I think that's why a lot of people shy away from it. But ultimately, as uncomfortable as you may feel by approaching this topic, or by bringing it up, or by listening to your loved one, know that the discomfort you feel is nothing in comparison to the discomfort that the person you're supporting will feel. Your discomfort is a fraction of what they are feeling. it means the world genuinely when people will put themselves out there and will get uncomfortable with you and will sit in the shit with you. That is so valued. But it does require you to put yourself aside and put your comfort aside and kind of step into this pain with the person you're trying to support. But I promise you, it really does mean the world. So if you're willing and able to do that, then please do, because that really does help. And the final thing that I will say is keep learning and keep an open mind. Grief moves very quickly in that, you know, I think our response to grief and the way we handle it, it is ever changing. It's so different day by day. You might be fine one minute, you might not be fine the next. Even like last week, I had a day where I was like this all day. I was on a high, I was really sad, I was on a high, I was really sad. It's like I never realized until I experienced grief myself how so many emotions could coexist side by side all the time. It's not just being happy or having a happy day, it's not just having a sad day, it is a whole cocktail of emotions blended together, basically. It moves very quickly, and that's why we need to keep having conversations, keep checking in with the person you're trying to support, keep having open conversations, keep asking them questions, and ask them what they need. And I think having that open channel of conversation and that very unconditional support with no judgment and no expectation is just so valuable. And remember that it's not about you. So if you're trying to support a loved one and they're not responding to your texts, or they respond in a way that you weren't expecting, it's not about you. So don't take it personally. I've had people say, you know, like, oh, you've not responded to my text, like, why don't you want to hang out with me? Have I done something wrong? And for me, it was like, you know, responding to texts even was exhausting. Getting dressed for the day, having a shower, getting out of the house was exhausting. And it wasn't anything to do with them. It was just, I just didn't have any more capacity. I didn't have anything to give. So you really just have to take your your ego and your pride and take that out of the equation and just think, I want to be there for this person if and when they need it, with no expectation about how they're going to respond or how they're going to receive your support. I think that's really important to keep in mind too. So that is a lot to digest and yeah, this video has been quite long, but I hope that that's given another perspective on how you can support a loved one. Just remember, literally anything goes. There are no rules. It keeps changing, but the fact that you are trying and you're watching this video, and the fact that, you know, you're being present, and the fact that you want to support your person is just everything. So keep on doing that. And yeah, I hope that this was useful. So as always, leave me a comment down below if you'd like to learn more, if you have any questions. I'm happy to keep speaking about this, and let me know if there's anything else that you'd like me to cover around this topic. But thank you so much for watching and for your support, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.